Okay, working on the KW again today. This is a small cam engine I've got set to 350 horsepower, but I won't go over the overhead on it. The last time I did a video on this, I used the dial indicator method. And today I'm going to use the torque method. It's a little bit different, but I want to run through it. It's pretty simple. It's probably the easiest one you can do. But first thing you're going to do is you're going to find your on your accessory drive, there's A, B, C, and then there's also a TC16, which is in between C and A, I believe, but we don't really need that one. But then there's an indicator on the front of your gear cover, and this one's a little hard to see, but they don't have to be exactly on the money. I mean, there's enough, if you get it within range, there's enough you know, the injector stays down for a period of time, so that's where we're going to set it. And I'll just kind of go over the best way to do this is to set it on A, and then you're going to check your rocker arms on number 1. And I've had this rocker box off, so I've already checked. This is if these two are loose and the injector is down all the way, you're on number 1, so you set number 1. Now number 6 is your running mate, so you check to see if number 6 is loose, and right now we've got intake valve open on number 6, so we know we're not ready to set number 6. But on A you will set 1 or 6 depending on if your valves are loose. And on this, like I say, in this case, my valves are loose. Now this procedure is completely different than the other one. You need to disregard everything in the book about setting with the dial indicator method, because it's just completely different. So what we do is we actually set the injector first, and we're going to crank this down. And when you do this, that injector will probably already be down, but the book says to turn this down until you hit bottom, and then another 15 degrees to squish the oil out of the injector cup. And then you back it up a half a turn, and then we're going to set it to 72 inch-pounds on this setting here. After we set the injector, we'll set the exhaust valve and the intake valve on that cylinder. Then we'll turn to B. Okay, the first thing you're going to see on adjusting valves is this shows you what I just showed you on the accessory drive pulley. That's where your marks are. That shows you the lineup, and shows you this is where the marks actually are if you're facing the front of the pulley. But the first thing you're going to see is the dial indicator method. Now this method is the one I did in the last video, and it's completely different, so don't do anything the same as that. But what it does on that is when you go on to A, you're going to set the injector on 3 and the valves on 5. And then you're going to go to B, and you're going to do 6, 3. You're going to go in that order. Now this gives you the adjustments here. Your intake and exhaust are 11 and 23 on this setting. That's with the aluminum rocker box. I think the cast iron's a little bit different. And European big cam, which we don't have those over here, but that's in the book also. This shows a top stop injector. You don't want to set a top stop the way you set. This is a non-top stop. But anyway, disregard these pages right here. Don't look at these when you're doing it this way. The page you're going to want to look at is a couple pages back. Well, it's right here. It says the torque method to adjust the injectors. Okay, it says rotate the engine till you set it to A, and loosen the adjusting screw on your injector. Or you loosen the lock nut, tighten the adjusting screw until the plunger is at the bottom of its travel. Tighten it, additional 15 degrees to remove all the oil from the injector cup. Loosen the adjusting screw 1 full turn and use a torque wrench that's calibrated in inch-pounds to adjust the injectors. The torque wrench must have a screwdriver adapter. Tighten to the value shown in table 15. In cast iron, cold set is 48 inch-pounds. That's different than the hot set. And we're doing cold set with aluminum, and 72 and 72 on aluminum housings. So we're going to set it to 72 inch-pounds, which is, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, 6 foot-pounds. And after it says to tighten it with your torque wrench 2 to 3 times to make sure it's correctly adjusted. Then you hold it and you tighten your lock nut 30 to 35 foot-pounds. And it says when you're using the torque method, the valves and injector are adjusted on the same cylinder before rotating the crankshaft to the next cylinder. So you have to do actually 2 complete turns to do it this way. Now the difference between the two is when you do the torque method, you're setting the valves and they're already preloaded by the injector, so our clearances are a little bit bigger. On this setting, you're going to go 14 hot or cold on aluminum and 27 hot or cold on aluminum housings. Cast iron housings, 16 on cold, 14 on hot, 29 on cold, 27 on hot. But we're going with 14 and 27 on ours. Aluminum is either hot or cold, doesn't matter, but we're doing a cold set. So this number changes from this number over here, just slightly. But the reason it changes is because the injector is actually preloaded and everything is tight, pushed up against the top, so that actually makes it a little bit looser. So if that makes any sense. So now we're going to go back to the truck. We're going to adjust 1 cylinder, and then I'm going to go through one more time about turning the engine over to the next, turn the engine over, and you basically just go in the firing order. Now you just got to be sure you start with number 1, 1, 5, 3, 6, 2, 4. Go in that order, and you're going to go from number 1. Just remember, you're going to set A is going to set cylinder number 1. B is going to set, well, actually A would set 1 and 6, but you're going to have to turn the engine over because you have to have each cylinder set to where it's the injector is down all the way and the valves are closed, or yeah, valves are closed. But basically you just go in the firing order and keep turning the engine over until you do 2 full turns. When you get back to C, and that'd be number 4, I believe, you will be done if you start at 1. So I hope I didn't confuse anybody there, but this is the easiest method to use. But like I say, if you do it and you look at this page here, if you set your injector on number 3 the way my engine's set right now, it's actually open or up. So if we set this injector to 72 foot-pounds, or inch-pounds, not foot-pounds, inch-pounds. If we set it to 72 inch-pounds and then we bar the engine over, we're actually gonna, that rocker arm's actually gonna come down and crush that injector or bend the push rod. So I'm not gonna cover top-stop injectors. This book has both in it. This book is one of the later ones. I used to have an earlier book, but I don't have it anymore. But anyway, this book, you know, has all of the engines in it. But like I say, when you're doing it this way, pay no mind to this page over here because some guys have messed up. And this is called the, this method's called the inner base circle, which is when you're setting it on the small side of the camshaft, and this is called the outer base circle. A lot of guys prefer this. They say you actually get less smoke on a cold morning, and that could be because you're taking up all the slack in the system and you're actually putting a little preload on the push rod. So this method may be more accurate for an older engine that's got a little more wear on it. So But this is the one we're using today. And like I say, I think you can see this page here pretty well. And you can stop the video here, whatever you need to do. I don't have time to go through and show everybody every detail in this book. If you need a book, you probably need to buy a book. But I've had people ask me to copy this. I don't have time to do that stuff. I have a limited amount of time to fix my own equipment and keep it running. And as an added bonus, I do try to throw a video out every now and then, and that takes a little extra time. So please understand I don't have time to answer a lot of those questions. I'm not trying to be a jerk, but you know, if you're working on an engine, you should have a book. Don't do it without a book. But this will get you through a valve adjustment. Not saying it won't, but like I say, hopefully this will help you. What we're going to do is tighten. We're going to actually tighten this down until we hit bottom. And that's actually pushing the injector down until we hit bottom. I think we just hit bottom there. And I don't know if you can see, but it is useful if you got a good screwdriver with a tang you can put a wrench on. It says to go ahead and squeeze the oil out. Now I've got, these two are loose and we're setting the injector first. Always set the injector first. Okay, we got it squeezed, we got the oil squeezed out. Okay, so now I'm going to back that off one full turn. And I might need my wrench. So we'll back this off. And then I've got my little torque wrench set up here for 72 inch-pounds. Get that out of the way there. This is not real convenient. My torque wrench doesn't have a ratchet. My small one doesn't. So I need to get me one with a ratchet. But what we're going to do is we're going to go till we click. And then we're going to, it said to do that about 3 times, so we're going to back that up. We're going to make it click again. Looks like we're going about the same spot every time. Now, I think it said 2 to 3 times, but we'll go 3 on this one. And just be sure we're getting it. Now you gotta be sure this nut's not binding up or tight. So now that injector is set. It's set to 72 inch-pounds. Now we're gonna tighten this up. It says to 35 foot-pounds, which if you got a nice wrench like this, that's not a whole lot of. I'm not gonna torque them. I'm just gonna set them like that. Now. On a Cummins 855, exhaust is always on the end. It's on both ends. And then you've got intake, exhaust. So each head, there's 3 heads. Each head will have the exhaust on the outside, the intake's on the inside. So our exhaust, will set it first, and it's supposed to be at 72, or no, 27. Too many numbers in my head today. We'll set this at 27 thousandths. If you're a metric fan, let's see what that says on there. 0.686 millimeters. So we set that feeler gauge under there, and I like to set them just a little bit tight, because usually when you set your lock nut it loosens up a little bit. So set that there. And those are, we got a slight drag on the feeler gauge. That's exactly where we want that. Okay, now we'll go to the intake, and the intake is set at 14 or 0.356 millimeters. So set that down there. And I like to take my gauges out of the feeler gauges have a, you know, block, or usually come in a set, but I always pull mine out. It's easier to handle them, easier to get a feel for them. I'll set that just a little bit tight, and then we'll tighten that set nut, lock nut. And you need a pretty good beefy flat blade screwdriver to do this. So we got a light drag on that one. Now we're done with number 1. Now we bar the engine over to B, and then we will set, I'll go through one more with you. We're gonna set, should be ready on number 5. We'll check, make sure the valves are loose, so that means we're ready to set number 5. So the first thing we do, we'll loosen up the set, or the lock nut on the injector. Okay, we'll make sure it's loose. And we're going to tighten down the injector. And these are probably not that far out of adjustment. I can't even turn that one. Yeah. We'll have to get a shorter screwdriver. Okay, now we can tighten that. Maybe. But I'd say we're probably bottomed out there pretty good. So we'll back it off a turn. I'm gonna go ahead and just hand tighten it back up a little bit to get us close for the torque wrench. And just be sure you're on the right cylinder when you do this. That's kind of interesting. Seems like we're a little bit too tight on the injector settings on here. And when I did them last, I used the torque method, or I used the indicator method. That's right, indicator. I'll back it up a little bit. Make sure it's right where it's supposed to be. Tighten this, and then we'll jump and we'll set the valve lash, or the clearance, valve clearance. Just be sure your adjustment bolt don't turn. Before I loosen those, I'm going to actually check, see what our clearance is like. Tight, very tight. Okay, so we got to I'm gonna have to adjust the valves also. I like to do this, I don't know, every couple of years at least. Of course, I don't drive this truck like an over-the-road truck, so it runs about 2 hours a day, most days I'm working. sometimes less. It's a little bit too loose now. Too tight to too loose. Okay, I like that better. I'm gonna say our intake is probably just about right there. So I'm not gonna mess with that one. It's got a light drag on it. Good to go. But anyway, that's the procedure for this. Just remember, do it in order. You go in the firing order in the right direction of your engine rotation. Engine rotation, usually you can determine by the fan blade on a truck. It usually pulls the air back, so it goes this way. And so we've done A, B, and now I'll go to C, and that'll be number 2. And then we'll go back to, no, wait, 1, 5. I said that wrong. On number 1, we said A. A is number 1. B is number 5, 1, 5. C will be number 3, which will be this one. And then we'll go back to A again, and then we'll go to number 6. And just go through the order of the firing order. A, B, C, 1, 5, 3, 6, 2, 4. And that's it. That's all I'm gonna show you. I mean, the rest of this is just repeating the same thing I did. And you know, it's not a complicated job, but it is something that you need to have a pretty good understanding of how these things work. If you have any questions on it, you need to find somebody that can answer it, because you don't want to adjust these at the wrong time and then actually bend the push rod or break an injector. It's just not a cool thing to have happen when you're in the middle of something like this. So anyway, that's it. Thanks for watching.